Welcome to Season 4 of the Biz Show, sponsored by InvestQuire. Discover what's next with this insightful podcast. And now, your hosts, Barry and Lisa.
Lisa, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's
Excellent.
beautiful out today.
It's a warm day today here. We're going to be in the 80. Not the 80. We're going to be at 80. There you go.
I don't know if you're a little tongue-tied there.
I think I've been that way all day today. I don't know why, but I slept well.
Maybe you shouldn't be working today. Maybe you should go do something fun.
Yeah, there's an idea. I might not come back, though.
Yeah, well, there's an idea.
Then you're going to be looking for your business partner, going, hey, where'd you go?
I'll have to do the podcast with me, myself, and I.
There you go. Well, that's 3 of you, so you're good.
There are 3 of me sometimes.
Yeah, well, listen, everybody. Welcome to the Biz Show. How you doing today? Thanks for tuning in.
Podcast
20.
20?
Yeah.
Season 4.
We're 2/3 the way there. So yeah, episode's 20. This one we're just finishing up the HR. We got one more HR one after this, I do believe. And then we'll move into another business related topic. But this one is basically what? Company culture.
Yeah, building company culture, even if it's just you and you're a solo business owner.
Yes, and I've had a lot of conversations with owners in the past of company culture, and people don't really get it or understand what it is or how it can really make or break a company, right? So that said, it's a little bit of everything, but we're going to drill down into that. Lisa and I got some good information for you, some tips and some gotchas to watch out for, but we want to make sure that you guys have the latest and greatest in any of the topics that we talk about.
That's right. It all kind of stems from mindset. If you wake up in the morning and you have an excellent positive mindset, then you'll be able to bring that culture to your company. And if you do have employees, then that energy hopefully will rub off on the guys that work for you, the guys and gals that work for you. And so, yeah, you really do need to bring that culture to the office and to your work environment. But it does stem from your mindset. So
it does. And it all starts with you, right? There we go. with you. It starts with you. And so let's kind of just drill down onto what is, company culture. What is it actually, right? What's it mean? So company culture itself is several different things, right? It's about communication, it's about accountability, it's about professionalism, responsiveness, specifically to your employees, but also to your customers, your leadership style, expectations that you want back and that your employees are expecting out of you, and then, the value of those actions per se.
That's right, because your culture is definitely going to show up in how you answer your emails and how you're communicating with your clients. You want them to come back and do more business with you, so you have to bring some motivation, enthusiasm, and energy to answering emails or answering the phone calls. It's how you treat your customers on the daily basis, right? You want to be somebody that they remember and that they want to continue to do business with. And also, when you have a bad day, you may have some mistakes that happen or product is defective or whatnot. It's how you handle those situations and those hurdles that come up on the daily basis. You want to make sure that you do it with a smile, even though you may be feeling like really frustrated on the inside. So that will also transpire into good culture. And it's how you manage your pressure, right? I mean, I've had days where I'm just like not doing so well in terms of managing pressure, but it affects the employees and the people that you come in contact with during the day. So definitely try to put on a happy face, so to speak. And it's going to affect your employees and how they are able to relate to the clients and to their duties every day. So make sure that you have as much positivity in your culture and your work environment as possible so that it does not affect your teammates.
I've been in management now for 40 years. I hate to say it because now I feel really old in saying that. But from when I first started, Well, I started in the military, really, so that's a whole different company culture because you just yell and scream a lot at everybody and they get stuff done. But
Yeah.
now, 40 years later, completely different. And the thing is, as I said at the beginning, it starts with you, right? You set the tone for your company culture, right? And that tone is going to be, various different things. But if you are a flake, right? If you're disorganized, you're, as you said earlier, reactive to certain things. Maybe you're hot-headed or whatever the case might be. You're not consistent. You're constantly showing up late. How can you have an employee who's showing up late if you're showing up late? How can you reprimand them?
That's
You
right.
lead by example, right? So if you try to do that, shame on you. You should just close your company down and go become a muffler repair mechanic or something because you shouldn't be a manager or an owner of a company if you're trying to discipline your employees for doing the exact same things you do because you set the tone.
So what are you saying, Barry? Muffler repair mechanics can have a bad attitude?
Well, they don't have customers standing in front of their face, or employees over their back. But yeah, I know, I know. I'm just making a metaphor in regards to that, right, Lisa? I couldn't see you working on a muffler under a car working on a muffler.
You'd probably see that the cuss words flying if I were. So yeah, bring that culture to your environment, and if you are doing a good job at that, then you're going to be able to show accountability amongst your coworkers and your clients, and you're going to be very well prepared because you're going to have sort of a very maybe a peaceful energy about you, where you're actually feeling very organized and very on top of the duties that you have at hand. And then be respectful, right? When you're having good culture, you're respectful of others. I think that kind of like transpires into other avenues in your life and other relationships. Um, and then you'll be able to be very customer focused because you're going to maybe enjoying your job more if you're having that good mindset and being respectful and grounded and organized. And then always be about the solution or the result that you want, that your desired result is with regards to, you know, increasing your productivity and getting more clients and making that money.
Yeah, all good points, right? Accountability is awesome. And, again, you set the tone, right? If you're accountable to your employees, they'll in turn will be accountable to you. So let's kind of set the stepping stones for this. But listen, it's not rocket science, right? This is probably common knowledge, or it should be common knowledge, but I find it's not. A lot of people don't quite understand, I don't know how to be nice, or whatever, right? Maybe they need to learn it, but so the first thing you need to do is define what are going to be your standards, right? So, what do you stand for? And I'm not talking about your mission statement for your company and all that, but what I'm talking about what you stand for in regards to you yourself and how you want to portray yourself to your employees. Do you want to be an authoritarian and a tyrant, or do you want to be the nice boss who lets people walk all over them? No, you don't want to be either one of those, right? You want to be somewhere in the middle, fair. I've always done fast, fair, with my employees. So I'll make a decision fast, but after I get all the facts, got to have all the facts. So,
Yeah, as long as as long as I know you, you've always been very consistent in that, in how you approach your employees as a manager, and you've always been very fair, even if you feel like you don't want to, but you always come across that way to me.
I definitely think people deserve second chances. We're all human. We all make mistakes. I'm not going to jump down somebody rear end for making a mistake. I make them myself, right? You make them, I make them. Everybody makes them. It's part of, I guess, being human. So so be it. So if you make a mistake, okay, own up to it. Let's figure out what the mistake was and fix it and move on. It's as simple as that. But anyways, so what behavior is acceptable? As I said earlier, you don't want to be a tyrant, but you also don't want to get walked all over. And then what type of business are you building? And this is key, right? Because a lot of candidates that are coming to your company they're looking at the business that you're building, right? And what that stands for. So, certain employees, they only want to work for green companies, right? Or they only want to work for things that help the environment, or they want to work for things in, the aerospace industry, whatever the case might be, right? And I'm not saying that's specifically it, but what I'm saying is, what does your company, what are you building here? So examples are, responsiveness, right? Transparency, accountability, and professionalism.
That's right. Yeah. And along those lines, you definitely want to have your operational discipline, like we mentioned earlier, because a culture without systems just becomes a really chaotic environment for your. We'll cut that part out.
I was going to say, what happened?
Lucas started barking. So culture without systems becomes a chaotic environment for your employees, and you don't want to have that chaos in your workday. So you want to create processes and really fair expectations amongst the employees that work for you. You want to make sure that you're having expectations with yourself in terms of like what you are holding yourself accountable to achieving each day. And you definitely want to have good communication standards across the board. You don't want to be inconsistent with that, with different employees or different clientele. You just want to have a very, high standard in the way that you're communicating, and good follow-up habits, right? Sometimes we think about, achieving a higher level of business income, but we're not having good follow-up. So therefore, those numbers are not going to reflect that. And so your culture is really going to have to tie into increasing those numbers and making sure you're doing a good job at following up. And that does require discipline, absolutely 100%. Um, and then those extraordinary companies are doing all of those things and they're operating very consistently across the board. So, I mean, if you're like I was mentioning, every time I meet Barry for a phone call or a Zoom call, I mean, you're always consistent. You always have the same attitude. You always have such a good morale. And that really like transpires in the effectiveness of us accomplishing what we set out to do every day, because I never have to deal with like a chaos Barry or a Barry that shows up, with a frown on its face. So it's
Well, yeah. I always try to turn that frown upside down, right? And I know you do too, Leah. You could be saying the exact same thing about you as well. Um, so company culture also is external, right? So yes, it's really about the company and the employees and the interaction between the employees, but that is a byproduct of that is how the customers are treated, right? And what the customers see, because trust me, customers see what's going on inside your company, right? You might not think they do. So how do they feel? Do they feel valued, right? Do they feel that, they're the customer and that you value them being there? Or are they being ignored? Are they being respected or not? And are they confused? What's your products? What's the service? What do you offer? I don't even know what you offer. So
we've been on many Zoom calls like that, right? We're like, what
yeah,
do you
we
offer?
have. After the Zoom call, we get off the phone and call each other and go, what was that call about, man? What are they selling or what are they trying to do? It's like, I'm not sure. So
Absolutely. I know. Yes. So I always like, when I'm doing interviewing for my real estate team, I always think about how they show up and what kind of attitude they have, because even if they have the best skills and all of this experience on their resume or whatnot, I always hire for attitude, not just skill, because we want to bring that great attitude into the work environment, and it's just going to spread like wildfire. So I definitely have some really key players on my team that I just love being around them. I love when they come into the office because they just have such an amazing attitude that they bring to the table. Very professional, very positive, very upbeat, and very, much showing up with enthusiasm. So in certain jobs and industries, like Barry said, maybe not so much a muffler mechanic, but maybe in of a sales role, you're going to have to bring to the table like some really positive energy, right? And really good attitude, especially if you're on the front line with customers. So that is really crucial. A technically skilled person could destroy your culture because maybe they're just a grumpy person. Maybe they don't have that natural ability to get along with others, and they could be very analytical and they just like have their head down all the time. So I like to do a disc test when I bring people on because then I'm able to kind of hone in on what their strengths and their weaknesses are so that I know where to place them in the job position. And maybe, that's when you don't put them on the front line, right?
Right.
Um, yeah, you also want to make sure that you're hiring for adaptability because, like I said, if you do want to plug and play them in certain positions or move them over into a different position or promotion, then you want to make sure that you're hiring a person that could adapt easily and has that positivity to try on a new hat, if you will. I've heard countless times, some of my clients and friends and colleagues in the corporate world, they're saying that they're in a management position and they have this employee or this team member on their team and they just do not have a great attitude. So when they go to them with projects and say, oh, here's a list of things to do today, and they just have the worst attitude, then they can't even rely on that person to carry out their job very effectively because they're not sure they're going to do it or not because they're just such a negative Nelly about it. So I think no matter what your role is, you need to make sure that you bring to the table some key players that do have a good positive attitude, even if their skill set isn't there. Because you can train somebody how to do a job, but you can't train them how to have a better attitude about life in general.
You are exactly right. When I was at GE, Alvis has covered a couple of different companies. There's been times that I've had two candidates, one completely qualified, got all the certifications in the world, and they had the a personality of a rock, right? And then I had somebody who had no skills whatsoever at all, but I just loved their attitude, the personality. I hired them and I kicked the rock to the curb. And then I coached, I mentored, I got them the training they need, gave them the resources. They became some of the best employees I've had, right? Because that builds the company culture. That's infectious. That attitude then spills out to other employees. I've had employees that weren't that good of employees who met up and started working side by side with them. And in a month or so, now they're all happy and excited and moving. So like it's infectious.
Yeah, but you did a good job at recognizing the people that are performing with that attitude, right? And just giving them some acknowledgement, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. And the positions I were hiring for were developers or computer network engineers. So I mean, it was technical skills that were required for the job. But yeah, I went without the skills instead and just really, coached, mentored them, had them shadow people and learn knowledge that way. It took a little bit longer, absolutely, but the customers loved it and it paid off. So yay. And that kind of really drills down into the next one, right? Rewarding the appropriate behavior, right? So pretty self-explanatory, right? Maybe you're going to give out, awards or something like that. Maybe you give them some initiative, ownership, teamwork, all of those things. You want to recognize. The same with the professionalism. How you recognize that's really up to you, but recognize it one way or another, right? Even if you don't have the money, but you just say, hey, you did a great job. I really appreciate it. And you pat them on the back. That does go some distance, besides
Yeah.
giving them a $2,000, trip to the Bahamas. Those days are gone nowadays, I think. At GE, we used to give out vacations, a 2-week vacation.
Such a great perk.
Yeah, it was a great perk back in the 90s.
Yeah. I like to bring culture to the table amongst the people on my team by a reward of like a happy hour or a dinner, once a month.
Yeah,
Like Thursdays, let's all meet at a local restaurant and let's just celebrate. The food is on me that night, and just sort of like bring them together and be able to like spread the culture, like right there outside of the office,
yes.
and just make sure that they understand that you really appreciate their hard work and you want to reward them for it, like Barry mentioned, by treating them to a happy hour, dinner, or whatnot. That just really kind of it maybe reignites their motivation about their job. I think that's
Yep,
important.
it is
And that
very.
and that's going into the next point is that's how I lead by example is bringing that. willingness to give them that credit, give them that reward, give them that personal time outside of the office from, myself and extending that over to them, because that's just going to show them that if I'm willing to be that, I'm leading by example, then maybe when they come to the job, they will be willing to do that for a client. They'll be willing to do that for each other and help each other out in each other's job roles, right? It's not just culture of them serving the public or doing their job, but maybe helping each other. I think that could be like one of the benefits of leading by example, right? Because if I'm not always disciplining an employee for doing something wrong, but I'm actually praising them for doing something right, then maybe they'll catch on to that and do that with their colleagues.
I try to reinforce that behavior, actually. I try, if they're doing something great, I try to praise them for it and make recognition for that. And then, as you said, yeah, you can really push that behavior forward and leave the bad behavior behind.
Yeah, because I mean, words only go so far, right? And people don't respond well to maybe some criticism, if you will. But if you're reinforcing it with just positive leadership qualities and culture and attitude and mindset, then that's going to maybe hopefully rub off on them, and hopefully they'll be like, wow, I want to be like Lisa and own a company and have a real estate team, and maybe that will be where they start implementing some of those qualities.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, they need to be like Lisa. Lisa's a smart lady for sure, and a lovely one. So
Good. Oh my gosh. Well, we're having some really good culture going on right here, Barry, right now.
there you go. See, I'm giving you that, and you're giving it to me too. But let's, so what is extraordinary culture? What's it actually look like? Honestly, you see it daily. You just don't recognize it, right? For the most part. What is it? It's clarity, right? About, what's happening, what's going on, who's doing what. It's accountability, number two, right? It's consistency. That's one of the key things, consistency, right? Trust and professionalism, right? So all of those wrapped up together, that's kind of what you're looking at is extraordinary towards growing that company culture the way you want. Consistency is very important as long as the consistency is professional and it has that trust in it.
That's right. And people will stay in strong cultures because the expectations are so clear. They know how to show up. They know what to do. They know what it takes to get rewarded, right? And so their expectations of them are just so defined and very clear. Communication between you and your employees or even with yourself is healthy, right? You do want to give yourself a pat on the back if you're running a solo shop, right? Like think about your wins and praise yourself, right? Maybe celebrate with your loved one or friend over dinner and just be like, gosh, celebrate those wins and just, create that momentum of your culture, even outside of the office.
Yes.
And make sure the leadership amongst a team is stable and that they are showing up and they are consistently leading by example. And so a stable leadership, not one with highs and lows and ups and downs and hot and cold, is not going to impact culture in a positive way. So make sure your leadership is stable. I mean, stable is such a key word there. And that there's an ability for problems to get solved and that there's not going to be things just lingering in the way of, which is going to, reduce your culture and reduce the morale and also, in essence, the overall productivity of your team. So make sure you get those problems cleared up out of the way and keep the strong culture moving forward.
Yes, excellent point. And those are some of the things that really impact the company culture, right? I mean, strong cultures, they have retention, employee retention. And, I've been a turnaround CEO and have come into companies and helped them turn the corner. And when they tell me we've got, a large turnaround of employees, company culture is the first thing I look at because typically that's it. If you got a crappy, excuse my language, but if you got a bad company culture, employees are leaving left and right, and you can't fill in fast enough. It's called, attrition, right? Employees are going out the back end. They're always going to go out the back end, so you need to be filling employees in the front end. But if they're going out the back end faster than they're coming in, yeah, that's an issue.
What's happening in there, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I immediately start looking at company culture, and I immediately start looking at the CEO, the CFO, the COO, all the vice presidents, and I find the problem and what that problem is, and then we sit down and have some talks and figure out how we're going to fix that, right? But also not just retention, but productivity, right? All of a sudden, your productivity starts going down. However, you may measure that, right? Because companies measure that in different ways. But and the customer experience too. I mean, customers, they feel the company culture. As I said earlier, they can tell what's going on in your company, right? And if you got a bad attitude, I can guarantee some of your employees are going to have a bad attitude, and then that's going to rub off into the client. Remember, I mentioned to you at All Bases Covered, I had a salesperson working for me. She made $452,000 a year, and she worked 100% commission. She wanted to work that way. And I went out on calls with her, and I was shocked because she would yell and scream at the customer, tell them they're doing this wrong, and you're an idiot, and all this. I'm like, whoa. But for her, however, I don't know how that worked. But that normally doesn't work. That's a bad example. Yes, she made a lot of money. Now she's no longer employed, though, right? So, and this was a company that I came into to take over, and turn it around. I did not get rid of her, but we did go through some training and stuff like that with her. And, but then the company was sold off. So everybody went their different directions. But, so those are things. And then, of course, scalability, right? If you're trying to build your company up, you can't scale it because you keep losing customers, or not customers, but employees at the back end. And, every time you lose an employee at the back end, experience goes with them, right? Not just experience of skills for whatever they do, but experience of the company, the experience of the customers, right? So you lose all of that retention that you had goes out the back door. You're bringing in new people, and those new people, they don't know it. They have to learn it, or they fake it till they make it, whatever the case might be, right?
Yeah, and then there's also a little bit of drama around that, because if you're constantly letting people go, then the other employees that are there are like, talking about it, and then their morale is going to dip a little bit, right? And it creates that toxic environment, and that those rumors that are flying around is going to provide a lot of instability for your company, and then a higher risk of maybe other employees wanting to stay. Maybe you fired their best friend or something, and they're going to be like,
Well,
"We're not
yeah,
coming too."
yeah,
And you're, taking like 10 steps backwards just to get to that, so think about it, very clearly before you let somebody go, and see if there's opportunity for improvement before you just like constantly, or take a look at yourself. I mean, that's really, you're the foundation of the company, and
look at that
it's
mirror.
you that,
But
yeah,
those all affect the valuation of the company, right? You and I, as business brokers, we come in and we evaluate companies, and that's one of the factors that we look at, right? Employees going out the back end and stuff like that. And then when you have investors and all that other stuff come in, there's
they're
issues.
going to look at
But
your turnover rate, your operational stability. They're going to also look at your culture and the
yep,
management style and quality of the leaders and managers.
yep.
That's going to play a key factor into whether or not they want to buy your company. If Barry and I, like he said, are trying to sell your company for you, or if investors are going to provide any funding, they're going to look at all of those things before they make a decision.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It's
It's our tips,
so
our pro tips.
our pro tips. Our pro tips. Pro tip number one is, self-explanatory. Culture is built on small things, little things bubbling up to the bigger things, right? Tip number one. Tip number two, document your expectations. You have to communicate what your culture. I mean, as a leader, you have to communicate what's expected, right? And so that is expected. But how do the employees know if you don't tell them? The best way to tell them is get it in writing, right? Because if you don't get it in writing, somebody's going to come back and say, well, where does it say that? Or I didn't know that, because perhaps you forgot to communicate to them, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so that employee handbooks, I still love them. I live by them because it spells everything out. And whether it's an employee handbook or just the hiring document, that they sign that these are the policies and procedures that we're going to follow in the company, and they sign it. Now you've got something to back you up legally if you need it. And then, if you tolerate poor behavior, that's going to create a morale problem, right? And then that sets a standard. And that standard is that it's going to be negative, number one, and they're all going to complain about you as a manager or you as the owner or whatever the case might be.
Yeah. And pro tip number 4, you may want to create your onboarding processes, even if you're doing like a 1099 or hiring freelancers initially. So definitely have a process there. And we do want you to factor in their attitude, not just their skills. And pro tip number 5, protect your company energy. Negativity spreads faster than positivity, like, very bad way. So if you do see somebody acting like that, maybe pull them aside or go grab a coffee with them and say, hey, how are you doing? What's going on? Maybe something is going on in their personal life and they want to actually share that with you. You never know what goes on behind closed doors. I always say that. So
as long as it's not drama, don't share your drama. Leave that at the door.
Well, you're going to have to ask them to do that if you are able to have that conversation. And pro tip number 6, celebrate the wins constantly and consistently, and don't let those just go by the wayside, because that's how people's morale drop, is when they don't feel acknowledged. I mean, I just had a call from my manager broker, and I'm like, wow, thank you for taking the time to call me, because I've worked with you for 20 something years now, and I've never had you call and give me, the accolades of my consistent achievements over the years. And so it was just really meaningful to have that call, and I really appreciated it.
There you go. There you go. Well, a couple things to avoid, right? We typically like to throw in at least 5 things to avoid. And again, probably self-explanatory, but assume or don't really assume, or assuming that it just happens. It doesn't happen. You have to set the tone, right? You have to set that tone. And then hiring toxic high performers is an issue. We've already discussed that, and I actually went with somebody different instead of somebody that had all the skills. Even though they were a high performer and had the skills, I didn't do it.
Exactly. Yeah. And saying one thing and then doing another. Can't stand that. That is a pet peeve of mine. I cannot stand that. So it does show a lack of integrity, and it just creates a really bad environment, because people are going to catch on to that very quickly. And don't ignore any communication problems between yourself and an employee, or amongst your employees and colleagues. Don't ignore those. Let's nip those in the bud before they spread and do a lot of damage. And then waiting until you have employees to think about culture. I mean, that's kind of like doing things backwards, because you need to have that come from you, the foundation, first, and then that will be able to be spread amongst anyone that comes on board.
Yes.
And hopefully also your customers. You want them to feel good at the end of the day doing business with you.
Absolutely, you do. Okay, well, that's a wrap, right? So company culture, think about it. If you're starting or you think about starting a company, put that into your business model or your business plan as to what you want, right? And think about it prior to hiring your people and stuff like that. Again, remember, it starts with you.
Because that is your brand, right? And your reputation. Mm-hmm. And extraordinary companies are almost always built on very intentional culture. So be intentional, guys.
Perfect. All right, guys. Well, thank you for tuning into the Biz Show. We appreciate it very much. Please subscribe and like our videos. We're here to help you understand business, how it works, all facets of business. I mean, a lot of these videos, they're some of them are geared towards founders and startup companies and stuff like that, but a lot of companies that have been in business for 10, 20 years can still benefit from these. So please reach out, like and share, and subscribe.
Thank you all for listening to the Biz Show podcast. Subscribe to stay updated and follow Barry and Lisa on Facebook at The Biz Show. Share your comments or suggest business topics that you'd like to hear. Thank you all for listening. Bye.